Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling, well, a really significant challenge, South Africa.
Mhm.
A country known globally for relying, really heavily on coal. We're talking over 90% of its electricity.
It's extreme, and that puts it way up there in greenhouse gas emissions per person, globally speaking.
Exactly. So you've got this environmental crisis, but it's also tangled up with economics and, critically, a severe water shortage problem. The whole water energy nexus thing is huge there.
It really is. It's the definition of a hard problem. But the good news is we have a really solid piece of research to dig into today.
Okay.
It's a detailed modeling study looking at things hour by hour. It's called, officially, Pathway Towards Achieving 100% Renewable Electricity by 2050 for South Africa.
Right.
And it essentially lays out a roadmap, a technological one, showing how the country could actually move completely away from coal.
Okay. A complete transition by 2050. That sounds ambitious, maybe even a bit idealistic. So what's the core finding? What's our mission in unpacking this study?
Right. So the main thing we want to explore is the study's central claim, and it's a big one. It argues that getting to 100% renewables isn't just, technically possible, but that it's actually the least cost option and the most beneficial across the board, financially, socially, environmentally.
Least cost. That's surprising.
It is. So we're basically comparing two main scenarios they modeled. One is what they call the best policy scenario, or BPS. That's the one aiming for 100% renewables.
Okay, the green pathway.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
the other is the current policy scenario, the CPS. That's based more on, well, existing government plans, which still include building new thermal plants, coal, and nuclear.
Got it. Okay, let's unpack this then, because, you're talking about replacing a massive entrenched industry here. Coal is powerful in South Africa.
Absolutely.
The only way you get major change like that is if the money makes sense. So let's start there, the financials.
Exactly. The key metric here is something called the levelized cost of electricity, or LCOE.
Right, the LCOE. That's basically the average price tag per unit of electricity over a power plant's whole life.
Precisely. It's what ultimately determines profitability, investment decisions, and what consumers pay.
So lay out the numbers for us. What did this study find for these two paths?
Okay, so let's set a baseline. Back in 2015, the average cost was around 49.2 euros per megawatt hour.
Okay.
Now, jump ahead to 2050. Under the BPS, the 100% renewables path, the cost only goes up a tiny bit to about 50.8 euros per megawatt hour. And crucially, that includes paying for carbon emissions.
Wait, only 50.8? That seems incredibly cheap for a completely modern zero-carbon grid by 2050.
It is remarkably low.
So what happens if South Africa sticks with its current plans, the CPS?
Well, that's where the numbers really jump off the page, as you said. If the country follows the CPS path, keeps investing in new thermal plants, coal, some nuclear,
Yeah.
the average cost blows up. It skyrockets to 104.9 euros per megawatt hour by 2050.
Hold on. 104.9. That's more than double the price of the renewable pathway. According to this data, sticking with the current plan looks like, well, financial suicide almost.
It certainly suggests a huge cost burden. And here's something else that's fascinating. The study also ran the numbers without factoring in any costs for greenhouse gas emissions at all, sort of a pure market economics view.
Okay, ignoring climate policy costs. What happens then?
Even then, comparing those no carbon cost scenarios, the BPS, the renewable pathway, is still roughly 25% cheaper by 2050 than the CPS.
Wow. Okay, that's a really powerful point. It means even if you set aside the whole climate change argument, forget the environmental mandate for a second, and just look at the raw economics. This study suggests renewables simply outcompete fossil fuels and nuclear on price.
That's precisely the implication. The high cost in the CPS comes largely from locking in these long-term investments in thermal plants. They risk becoming stranded assets.
Yeah. Expensive infrastructure nobody needs anymore.
Yeah, because they just can't compete with the falling costs of solar and wind, especially after about 2025, according to this model.
Okay, that's a massive financial thumbs up for renewables. But let's switch gears to the engineering. If coal is phased out as plants reach their end of life, what actually powers the country? It needs to be reliable.
It definitely requires a huge shift in the technology mix, and this study shows two technologies just completely dominate the future grid in that BPS scenario.
Sure.
By 2050, solar PV, it supplies about 71% of the total demand, just massive solar deployment.
71%, okay.
And then wind energy picks up most of the rest, about 28%.
So hang on, add that up. That's 99% of the entire power sector running on solar and wind.
Pretty much, which confirms, in this least cost model anyway, that no new coal plants or new nuclear plants get built. They're just not needed or cost effective in this optimal pathway.
And that much solar.
Yes.
That must change where the power actually comes from geographically, right?
Oh, absolutely. It drives a huge geographical shift. Right now, nearly all of South Africa's electricity comes from one province, Mpumalanga, because that's where the coal is.
Right, the coal belt.
But in the BPS scenario, by 2050, what stands out is the Northern Cape province. It becomes the main exporter of electricity.
The Northern Cape. Why there?
Simple reason. It just has the best solar resources in the country. Loads of sunshine, lots of space.
So you're flipping the energy map.
Right.
A region that wasn't a big player suddenly becomes the powerhouse.
Completely, and that changes how the grid itself functions too. Under the current system, you need a really robust central grid to ship power from those few big thermal plants everywhere else.
Like sun.
But in the BPS, with solar and wind more distributed, regions become much more self-sufficient, generating and using more power locally, less reliance on moving power huge distances all the time.
That's fascinating. A kind of decentralization driven by sunshine, potentially redistributing economic activity. Okay, but we have to address the elephant in the room. Cost looks good, tech mix is clear, but 99% variable renewables, solar and wind. How do you keep the lights on 2047? How does this model guarantee reliability hour by hour? That's always the big question.
It is, and the answer is flexibility, specifically energy storage. A lot of it. The BPS pathway requires a total installed storage capacity of about 16.3 terawatt hours by 2050.
16.3 terawatt hours. That sounds like a huge amount. How does that break down? What kind of storage are we talking about?
Well, the study shows two main types playing different but complementary roles. First, you have battery storage.
Okay, lithium-ion, presumably.
Yeah, mostly. Batteries end up dominating the storage throughput. Throughput is basically how much energy cycles through the storage system daily.
Right. Charging during the day when the sun shines, discharging at night.
Exactly. With so much solar, batteries are absolutely essential for managing those daily peaks and troughs. They handle the short-term balancing act.
Okay, so batteries cover the day-to-day needs. But what about longer periods? You know, when you have several cloudy days or maybe a week with low wind, what handles that deeper seasonal variability?
Right, that's where the second type comes in, and it dominates the overall capacity. It's power-to-gas technology, or PTG.
Power to gas. Explain that a bit.
Essentially, you use excess renewable electricity when generation is super high and demand is low to create a fuel you can store easily, usually hydrogen or maybe synthetic methane made from hydrogen and captured CO2.
Oh, so you convert electricity into a chemical fuel.
Exactly, and you can store vast amounts of this gas. The model shows PTG making up almost all the storage capacity, about 15.7 terawatt hours by 2050. It really starts kicking in around 2040 in the model.
I see. So it acts like a massive energy reservoir.
Precisely. It's there to provide that deep, long-duration flexibility needed to smooth out those weeks-long or even seasonal variations in solar and wind output.
That makes sense. So it's a portfolio, batteries for the fast, daily cycles, and power to gas for the long haul, seasonal backup.
That's the concept.
Okay, beyond cost and reliability, there's this huge environmental co-benefit we touched on earlier, which is especially critical for South Africa.
Water.
Yes,
Yeah.
the water-energy nexus. It's absolutely vital there. Those existing coal plants, especially in Mpumalanga, are incredibly thirsty. They use a massive amount of fresh water for cooling. They're real water hogs, right? I think the study mentioned they account for something like 83% of the power sector's current freshwater use.
That's the figure. So moving away from those thermal plants has almost immediate and huge benefits for water resources.
Just how dramatic is the change in water use in this renewable BPS pathway?
It's pretty staggering. The study estimates that the BPS reduces total freshwater consumption and withdrawal by, get this, 99% by 2050 compared to 2015 levels.
99%.
99%.
For a country constantly facing drought conditions, that's transformative. You're essentially solving two existential crises, energy and water security, with one big infrastructure shift.
It really highlights the interconnectedness and contrasts that with the CPS, the current policy path. It only achieves about a 38% reduction in water use.
Why so much lower?
Because even if you build new, more modern coal plants, they still need significant amounts of cooling water. So the CPS locks South Africa into that dual energy water stress scenario for much longer.
Okay, another major win for the renewable path. Now let's talk about people, jobs. This is always a huge political issue, especially with coal. Moving away from coal mining and coal power often sparks fears of massive job losses.
Understandably so. It's a major concern in coal regions globally.
So what does this study say about employment? Does this BPS transition create more jobs than it displaces?
Yes, and significantly more, according to the modeling. Under the BPS, direct jobs in the energy sector actually grow substantially.
Now why?
Starting from around 210,000 jobs in 2015, the number peaks massively at almost 408,000 jobs by 2035.
Wow, nearly double. 408,000. What drives that huge spike in the mid-2030s?
It's mainly the construction and installation phase for all that solar PV. Building solar farms is quite labor-intensive initially.
Right, manufacturing panels, site prep, installation crews.
Exactly. Now, after that big build-out phase, the job numbers do stabilize a bit lower, but they remain very high, over 278,000 direct energy jobs by 2050 in the BPS.
Okay, so it's not just a temporary construction boom. It settles at a level still significantly higher than the starting point.
Correct. It suggests a sustained higher level of employment in the energy sector.
So it's a net gain overall, and quite a large one, especially during the transition. What about the current policy scenario, the CPS?
Under the CPS, jobs actually decrease slightly over time, ending up around 184,000 by 2050.
So about 90,000 fewer jobs in 2050 compared to the renewable pathway.
Roughly, yes. So the BPS offers a clear and pretty substantial advantage in terms of long-term employment based on this study's findings.
Okay, so cheaper power, massive water savings, more jobs. Let's circle back to the original driver for a lot of this. Climate change, carbon emissions. We established the BPS is the cheapest path. Does it actually hit the climate targets? Does it get to zero emissions?
It does. The BPS pathway, by definition, aiming for 100% RE, achieves a zero-emissions power system by 2050.
Okay, complete decarbonization of electricity.
Yes, and remember that other scenario we talked about, the pure market economics one, BPS OCC, without any carbon price.
Yeah, the one that was still 25% cheaper.
That one. Even that scenario, driven purely by the falling costs of renewables and storage, still resulted in 96% renewable energy generation by 2050.
96% renewables just based on cost alone.
That's what the model showed, and consequently a 96% reduction in emissions compared to 2015. So it's pretty overwhelming evidence from this study that deep decarbonization aligns perfectly with the least cost pathway.
Incredible. Okay, we've covered a huge amount of ground here, all stemming from this one detailed study. Let me try and summarize.
Go for it.
The data presented in this study suggests that a 100% renewable energy system for South Africa isn't just a pipe dream. It's modeled as being achievable, reliable, thanks to that sophisticated mix of battery and power-to-gas storage, and crucially, it delivers better outcomes on basically every important metric.
That seems fair.
We're talking potentially 50% cheaper electricity compared to current plans, a massive net increase in jobs peaking during the build-out, practically eliminating the power sector's water use, a 99% saving, and of course, achieving zero carbon emissions by 2050.
It paints a very compelling picture based on the assumptions and data used in the model.
It really does. Which leads, I think, to a final, quite pointed question for you, our listener, to consider. Given that this comprehensive modeling, this pathway toward achieving 100% renewable electricity by 2050 for South Africa, shows that the market forces, the technology costs, the resource geography, they all seem to align to make this 100% renewable pathway the clear winner, especially financially.
Yeah.
What are the real roadblocks? If it's not primarily about cost or technical feasibility, according to the study, what are the non-economic factors? The political inertia, the institutional challenges, the vested interests that are preventing South Africa from immediately pursuing this seemingly optimal path?
That's the critical question, isn't it? If the economics and technology point one way, what's pushing back?
A compelling question indeed. It suggests the biggest hurdles might now be political and social, rather than technical or financial. We've completed our deep dive into the pathway toward achieving 100% renewable electricity by 2050 for South Africa. Go forth and be well informed.